Hello guys, and welcome back to Strategic Command World War II, World at War with our Allied playthrough. In the last episode, we took on the war in the Pacific, sinking, I believe, 2 more enemy battleships, a light cruiser, and getting on the verge of sinking the Furutaka heavy cruiser. The Battle of the Pacific is basically won in terms of naval fighting. There's one more battleship we know of, but they only have an escort carrier, a submarine, a couple submarines, and that's about it. Their surface fleet is pretty much almost entirely destroyed, and the Chinese are now invading from the north and the south, which they left fairly unguarded, but seemingly keeping enough troops to keep the center itself well under their controls. There will be no need for the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in 3 years. However, it will still be a hard-fought battle to push the Japanese all the way back to Tokyo, that's for sure. Now let's look at the UK, who has been dealing with some more Battle of the Atlantics type stuff. A lot of enemy submarines popping out of the woodworks to cause some problems. Let's go send the Jersey destroyer to go find the one over here. Oh look, it's gone. Where could it have gone, I wonder? Let's see, can we find it going this way? No, we cannot. Whatever the status of this destroyer, I don't think it's in a particularly healthy state. The Ass destroyer over here certainly could use some repairs. We'll send the Annapolis heading up northeast, and oh, we have found it. Alright, cool. Now, the main thing I'm looking forward out of this is to be able to get the Ass destroyer back to Canadian ports that are now supplied by American supplies, and be able to just simply repair the Canadian destroyers back here. So let's go ahead and get the Annapolis destroyer, performing some ASW against the enemy sub here, which is running around in silent mode now, thinking that that will be enough to stop me. We do have one spotted submarine down here as well. Let's go looking for it. We found it. It's an extremely advanced submarine. I've never seen a submarine this advanced here. That we have traded about 5 for 5 damage or something like that. It's way more hurt than we are. We will definitely need reinforcements down here to keep an eye on this. We do have the capability to get the Career HQ over to Brest, so I will send it up there and land it over in Brest, where it will now partake in supplying supplies to the front over here, along with the Alexander HQ. The Career HQ being just as efficient, apparently, which is very nice to have, as we slowly try to trickle more and more of our units in here and prepare for certain battles. Now, our carriers that took part in the bombing of the enemies that showed up with the battleship is pretty much done. These carriers here don't have any upgrades nor replacements that they need to go try to attain. So let's try to make some room for them here to send the... Oh, here we go, to send them into a safe spot and free up these docks, as we have some other carriers that are going to need the docks. Here we go, swap out of your current mode, and let's see where we can get you. You, the Ark Royal carrier, can get down to Bristol, and we can get the Illustrious carrier up to Liverpool. We have the Formidable carrier fully repaired and upgraded and ready to go. We'll just send that down here behind all the battleships and whatnot. That's most of what's over here, right? Is battleships? Yeah. Let's go ahead and continue to just like move them up to make room for the carriers. And with that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 5 of the British carriers currently in a safe location. I will go ahead and naval cruise to get the Canadian cruiser or destroyer over here, the Ass destroyer, into a very safe port over here at Fredericton. God, that's an interesting name. We should hopefully be safe. Now, knowing that there's a big bad destroyer down here, we'll definitely want to send some help. The first one I will send is going to be the Mohawk. I'm going to send it just south like this, just to make sure there's nothing along the way. Then I can naval cruise further down south with the other 2 destroyers here, the other 2 British destroyers, to get them into a much better location to take on this submarine, should it choose to stay where it is. This is what I would have expected them to do a lot of their raiding for a long time, except they just, well, they didn't. The Lancaster over here, as well as the Bulldog, can go and engage the enemy submarine that we have found. Submarine dives from attack, not taking or dealing any damage. Let's send the Lancaster up as well. Submarine dives from attack, not taking or dealing any damage. We found it again. We'll send the Canadian Columbia destroyer after it now. Dealing 2 damage, not taking any. We'll send the Montgomery down. Submarine dives from attack, not taking or dealing any damage, and that's the extent of our destroyer forces capable of remaining and operating in this area. So most of our carrier fleet is ready to go on an operation, which is good as the American fleet will be departing soon. Not now, but soon. They're just staging for right now, and hopefully they'll be in position to start moving in good time. Still not entirely sure how I'm going to use them, but I know I need to keep the Atlantic as safe as possible, no matter what it costs me, and no matter how aggressively I must play in order to accomplish this. I might as well go do some scouting over here with the maritime bombers, just to make sure that there's no other enemies that are eluding me. There you go. Well, at least those directions are safe, to the best that I can confirm. Don't know still if I can spot submarines or not, but I've done my part in at least looking for the enemies. Over in Greece, we have a situation. Naturally, we're gonna well, I guess we're gonna reinforce the attack bombers just as well as we can, which is only up to 8, just due to the lack of British HQ power over here. Still, our Air Force is not doing very well. It does provide some very good cover for the units here, albeit not at the best efficiency. The tactical bombers were useful in attacking Italian navies, but they're so inefficient in how they operate over here that they can barely do anything. It's obvious to me that the Sudanese HQ is only going to cover Sudanese units, otherwise it would have been covering the Desert Air Force tactical bombers over here already. Sadly, it is not doing that. And sadly, the supplies down here are just completely dog shit. We're going to want to move it up, albeit I wish I could give it some mobility. It doesn't have that yet. It doesn't need it just yet. We'll just have to send it up north behind some of this other crap to try to get it to the front line sooner rather than later. For now, let's see here. We'll just reinforce the armored tanks since they're in a pretty good position to do that. We have 2 cores in the rear. One of them does need its mobility upgrade, which we will grant it. This core will likely leave its position, meaning it's a good spot for me to end up moving the actual Sudan Defense Force core, meaning I can send the Platt HQ up this road for the time being as we try to acquire a situation that leaves us with more supplies. We do have the ability to actually get some elite reinforcements on a lot of these units here, albeit the value in doing that could definitely be called into question. Especially if it makes the Sudan Defense Force Corps take more time to reach the front, but elite reinforcements could be very handy. So I will focus getting elite reinforcements for anyone down here that can get it, instead then just taking the Sudan Defense Force Corps and moving it up around along the road here. The Hellenic fighters, at the very least, are doing great due to the Greek HQ here to support them, which means the Greeks probably have the most capability to push forward since they can be supported by 2 HQs, but the Greeks, for whatever reason, not capable of supporting any Brits by the looks of it. I don't know the rules, man. I really don't understand the rules of what can support what. It's like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I really don't understand. I wish there was a lineup of what could support what, but sadly, there is not. We have an interesting front line to look at here. The enemy's basically abandoning the mine in Yugoslavia. We'll go ahead and send our artillery onto the Kuriza Corps at Dubrovnik to lower their entrenchments to 0, and we'll also use it on this corps just up here in the mountains to lower their entrenchment by, 2, not just 1. That's really nice. Holy crap. And dealing some damage to it as well. Pretty nice, pretty nice. I like this. We'll go ahead and we will attack with the 10th Army. The corps at Dubrovnik, dealing 1 damage as we can. We would have a hard time necessarily moving out from here, but there are other spots which we can move to and from. The Macedonian army can certainly move up. It doesn't have to stay where it is. We can move the desert anti-tank a little bit. I'll move it up into the mountains here just to get a recon over the area and see what the hell it is we're dealing with. We don't need to push northeast very much. Sofia is the only thing that matters in terms of pushing into Bulgaria. So we'll push the Macedonian army forward, as there's no other upgrades or anything that it can get or do. Let it entrench, maybe lure the Bulgarians into attacking it. Probably won't be that lucky, however. I will finally upgrade the Papagos Greek HQ with mobility, as it might need that to start keeping up with its units at this rate, with how we are pushing even the Greeks forward to try to fill in the line here, as we'll also probably continue to get probably the South Africans next, moving up to Greece, although that is not the main priority. We have more than enough troops to move down a narrow tunnel that we allow ourselves here. We need more troops instead arriving in Brest, and can reinforce that with HQs far easier. Let's see what we have here. The LRDG Special Forces can get a good attack in right now, so I think I will go ahead. It is a prepared attack, so we'll go ahead and attack the Italians in the mountains, dealing 2 or 3 damage, and I think 3, and receiving none, which is definitely fantastic. We'll go ahead and do the same with the British Corps here, dealing 1 damage, suffering no damage, and forcing the Italians to move back, which opens up the ability to push the 10th Army into that hill, and find even more Italian corps in the rear. If they have a lot of anything right now, it seems to be corps. Allows me to move the WDF army up, which we're going to go ahead and do, and attack the Dubrovnik Corps again, dealing another 1 damage and taking none. Alright, well, not the best that could have turned out, but it's something. Supply here at Skopje not quite being as good as I'd want it to be. This unit does have a strike, but it's not really going to be able to use it. The HQ is definitely needing to move forward. The supply in this region is just terrible. It's just terrible. It would be helped by having more HQs, but the region itself is just so packed with units. It would be hard to necessarily utilize all of it. We will push forward and secure the mine of Niche for the British, and that will allow me to push up something, secure further. We see a German corps is sitting on Belgrade. By pushing this far north, we've pretty much guaranteed that it will be the Brits that will push through and recover Yugoslavia at the very least, which allows some relief to the Russian forces and a chance to solidify their forces for the far more important push of Germany. The Rhodesian Special Forces certainly don't need any recovery time, so we'll go ahead and push them forward up to Niche. We don't have the ability to move the field artillery since they have been rather aggressive of late, and no one else really has any power to move up any further in this region. We are in pretty good supply for the fighters, but because they're not attached to an HQ, their supply is still just floundering, unfortunately. This leaves the question of what to do with the Epirus army, which I think I'm just going to leave it exactly where it is so we can get some chance to recover, as this can keep it in range of the Greek HQ for the time being as well. But moving the Greek HQ forward to Sofia or Skopje soon could be very important, or the British one up to Skopje would also be pretty handy. Looking in the Mediterranean, we will take the Truant sub and move it up to right about the center point for where our troops will be sailing through. It looks safe. There may be battleships and other things in port, but they're clearly not patrolling this area very well. So let's take the Slim HQ. Let's naval cruise that bitch to the Gibraltar, where it will then be able to pop out as soon as we make some room for it. We'll start by moving the Gibraltar garrison off of Gibraltar to secure, what do you know, another port, which is going to allow me even more flexibility on what I send where. The BAI army is going to go directly to the Gibraltar as well. We're going to drop that off at the Gibraltar and immediately move it forward. And we can already have it attack the first Spanish garrison across the river, so we will. Dealing 2 damage and taking none, that's a pretty fair trade for me. The Gurkha Special Forces can naval cruise their way up as well, and we'll drop them off and move them northeast onto this road, securing more of Spain. The 5th Corps is going to naval cruise over to the newly secured port at Cadiz and drop over there. And what I'm realizing is because Spain joined the Axis willingly, the occupation is always done by the person to secure the capital, meaning the Indians are going to end up occupying Madrid, which is really, really weird. But I guess they'll get some more income out of it. However, it means they're also going to have to worry about Spanish partisans, which do exist, as we can see. Spanish partisans will be here and could be a problem that could limit our advance, meaning we might want to get garrisons of some kind actually heading over here. Don't know if India can actually get very many of those. They have a couple at home, and they can get some more making. Getting just new cores and stuff up there might be better. I don't know if planes can stifle garrisons. Theoretically, any unit can stifle garrisons, so if we base the Indian planes out of there, that could be a solution. We'll drop the Slim HQ over in the Gibraltar, where it can then provide supply for everybody, and then get its upgrades sooner rather than later. We'll move the 5th Corps forward, securing more of the road line here. However, our odds of attacking the entrenched 1st garrison, not too impressive this turn, just due to the fact that we are blitzing. With all of our invasions that we're doing, we are in no rush, so there is no need to push any further or faster than we are doing right now. Just getting time to prepare some strikes and try to avoid losses could be a smart thing. However, supply in this region, seeing as we already own the Gibraltar and it is filled with some pretty decent supply. I'm surprised these are not major ports. The Cadiz port actually has more supply. Supply here should be good and capable of dealing with any losses. We'll go ahead and attack it. Oh, we actually completely killed it and took no losses, meaning the Spanish are going to have to, and the Germans, whoever, are going to have to try very hard to get units down here in order to reinforce it. However, this is where my blockading of Bordeaux has some value. If this has at all hurt the supply over here, it may stop them from operating troops down here. I don't know if that's true, because Bordeaux itself could still be pretty laden with supplies. Now, I could strat bomb it right now to try to prevent that from actually causing me any problems. However, I don't know if that's going to allow any fighter coverage. Yeah, it's kind of just, oh, no, we'll have fighter coverage. All right. In that case, I might be able to stop right now the ability for the Axis to send any reinforcements to Spain. So we're going to fly these strat bombings on Bordeaux itself. And nothing has fighter reach over here to stop me. The first attack dealing some decent damage. It looks like they still have 5 supply and 5 MPPs, so this was a very supply heavy location. Let's go ahead and drop another strat bombing. Another 3 damage and 3 MPP loss. Only 2 supplies, which means if this holds up even remotely to the next turn, the rail lines here should be rendered useless, if I understand the game's mechanics correctly. And due to a lack of ability to send through Vichy, because Vichy's still neutral, Spain is stuck with whatever it has. Even though it has sent its HQ and a bunch of its other units to the front to the east, that means it just has a couple corps and garrisons to defend it against a fully fledged Indian invasion. Now, mind you, the Indians still have more troops they can send. However, they're waiting on the ability to load up some new transports. As of right now, we cannot load up any new transports until next turn, and then it will still take time to get them into the Mediterranean to actually get them over here. So this army, special forces, Corps, and HQ are going to have to function by themselves with, I guess, the British garrison to assist in some way. We will go ahead and reinforce the Indian tanks over in Karachi, which is going to cost like half our MPPs this turn, so clearly nothing will be going into research this turn. Otherwise, all the units we're sending out next, the special forces, paratroopers, and these tanks, that's 1, 2, 3, and then the artillery, they have all the upgrades they can get. If we save the rest of the Indian MPPs, that should leave us with just enough to be able to put hopefully everything on transports, and then voila, the Indian points will be seeing some good use mounting an invasion of Spain, which will eventually lead into Bordeaux and link up with the British and Canadian offensive that will be maintaining for Paris, meaning things are looking pretty good. Again, it doesn't look like the Americans will really actually be needed, which makes actually going into Algeria and stuff even less important. And due to the passiveness and lack of capability of the enemy navy here, I'm thinking of just like lining long-range transports up the secured area here and then just charging them forward and going right for Syracuse with some British naval support. Really, I'm thinking that might be my best idea. The DEI sub will continue up into the Mediterranean, where it can still prove pretty useful for keeping an eye on the Italian Navy and striking out at any that dare to march around here. Now that we have a lot of subs that we can spare for stuff like that, the Brits do need to keep attention down here at Ley, where the Special Forces just keeps reinforcing itself. We'll go ahead and attack with our own Special Forces, dealing 2 damage and taking no damage, which makes me a little nervous about putting the Corps up there to attack, because the Corps has never really been able to do much damage, and if the Kanga Special Forces are maintaining, then maybe I should just send the corps over this way instead, where actually it looks like we can do some damage. Alright, let's go ahead and attack. Unfortunately not doing any damage, but keeping their entrenchment at minimal. 2 prepared strikes next turn for full strength and upgrade should hopefully be enough to knock these guys back, or at least do more damage and take more money out of the Japanese war machine. Even though all the British units aren't quite ready to go yet, we're going to want to start staging their navy and making sure that it's ready. Meaning positioning the, right now, 2 carriers should be more than enough with some naval support. So screens will be important. Battleships, sending that kind of stuff could also be useful. The Brits don't have as many battleships to lose. They have more carriers to lose, unfortunately. But getting these staged somewhere around Brest should be pretty decent. It's a fairly safe location and a good place where we can get our forces ready. So let's take the first glorious carrier here, and we will just send that just off the north coast of Brest. The courageous carrier will go and actually dock in Brest. And then we'll want to surround this with something to keep it safe. We do have a bunch of screens over here that are capable of moving out, and defending this channel isn't becoming any difficult feat. We have more over here as well. Let's try and get the ones coming down from the northeast first. The Sheffield light cruiser will go ahead and take this side. And then we have 2 heavy cruisers, which will take the north side. We'll get them in position. We do have a triumphant cruiser from the French that we can go ahead and give some ASW capabilities. Still taking forever to get those on our ships, just due to lack of port space that I've been willing to use. After being overly aggressive, I was like overly cautious, which is probably a mistake in itself, but due to the lack of the MPPs the Brits have had, I haven't felt like I really needed to correct it. We'll send the Suffolk heavy cruiser down here to make up a screen as well, the Norfolk heavy cruiser, and then both of the light cruisers we have to surround the carriers and make sure it's impossible to sneak in any kind of an attack to them. Now, we do need to get the battleships ready too, so we're going to want to move them up, although it's going to be a little harder to screen them. It's also going to be a little less important. For now, we'll move these battle cruisers up is what we'll do in St. George's Channel for the time being. How many battle cruisers do we have? The 2 of them, alright, which will allow us to start putting, actually, okay, you know what we could do with them? We can send the battle cruisers to block this off. It would be hard for them to get through. Even though their submarines are coming from the other side, their submarines are currently desperately engaged against our forces. This will allow me to get our battleships, which are still not as advanced as the American fleet due to lacking naval weaponry too. We've, again, been very split for UK points for so long. We could start moving our battleship fleet down south, maybe not as much, into positions that are safe enough, at the very least. Yeah, without committing them too much. Safe enough so that they can get ready for an operation in the Mediterranean, because that's where we're going to need them. The destroyers are good enough to do whatever we need anywhere else right now, and the main fleet has to get ready to go either into the Mediterranean or here. I doubt I'll have the Americans land in Spain, because I am boarding them on long-distance amphibious transports. I really do plan on just having them go somewhere else. If it's not going to be Africa, which right now I'm planning for it to be, it'll be Italy if it just looks like it might be smarter to just hop right in. The presence of the British Navy able to go into the Mediterranean is actually going to be a rather large thing. If I can commit it over there, and maybe even the other forces over here, which I might not do that much. We have so many carriers we can commit down here anyway. It's rather crazy. That would be enough to be able to just skip this part in general. The Italians may come out to try to force a major fleet battle, but again, we'll see. I haven't made my mind up on that yet. I want to make sure that these carriers are not running any intercepts right now, so I'll put them on... Actually, no. Intercept is exactly what I want them to do, to make sure they're not on any escorts. Okay. That goes for you too back here. Only intercept for you guys. No escorting, because I want the land forces I have here for my fighters to be taking up this new tactical bombing. I can get some elite reinforcements for this bomber, but I won't. I'm just going to try to, if I can, lower the entrenchment over here at Cherbourg. Luring out German interceptors, I know, but it's the best I can do right now. We dealt 2 damage to their fighters, they dealt 3 to ours, they dealt 2 to our bombers, but we did deal 1. to Cherbourg. More importantly, lowering its entrenchment and its readiness and morale. That's huge. Now we can attack with the Rupert Force Special Forces, dealing another 2 damage and taking none. Now we can also attack with the 1st Corps from the former BEF, dealing 2 damage and taking none. This would not have been nearly as possible without this air power. Air power is expensive to replace, however, air power is something that we have in bulk. And it's not going to be in nearly as much danger. We will load up the 2nd Corps here, as well as the BEF Army, onto transports, where they can kind of skip going to Brest and just go land right here at St. Malo, which is good, because I've already clogged Brest up to no tomorrow. So we'll land the BEF there. I kind of like wish that I had just moved the Alexander HQ, but that's fine. It doesn't need to move. We'll go ahead and reinforce these tanks as I was planning to. And we'll also bring the 2nd Corps over here, drop it off. And I'm curious to see how these 2 HQs will team up. I'm curious if the Canadian one will only help the Canadians, or what have you. If it does, that will be unfortunate, but I'm completely unsurprised. At the very least, with the Axis, you wouldn't have to deal with this kind of shit as much. I'm hoping the Canadians also help the Brits, but if they don't, then I just get the Canadian HQ near the front, and the Brits can try to just help the Brits, and I can maybe send the Canadians off in their own direction. The number 12 fighters no longer need to stay in Plymouth, as there's not a whole lot to do coverage-wise over here. I'll move them over to Maidstone, where they'll have a better range on everything that's going to be further into France. I so badly want to sail some fighters out here to try to fight their fighters, but then it's just gonna be like 1 fighter fighting 2, and for now, I don't know if I want to do that. It will hurt them, but it will hurt me, and it will probably hurt me more, but we can afford to be a little inefficient, even though air power is so expensive, because whatever damage we do to their air power is going to be very, very hard for them to replace, given all the losses and fronts they're currently maintaining. So yeah, fuck it. Let's send the number 11 fighters out. Interceptors, yeah, we took 1 damage, dealing 1 to their interceptors. Take another 1 damage, not dealing any further damage. So yeah, we're not doing very well with the actual quality of the air battle, but even though this is expensive to replace, the UK can now afford to replace it. The Germans cannot. Since the colonies are just so goddamn annoying about who they let their HQs support, I will go ahead and start building up the South African army more by getting the 1 army that they can have, and then eventually the other corps, so that the South African with their HQ, 3 corps and 1 army can make a fighting force that can stand out by itself and hopefully take some slack off the Brits, just in case the invasion ends up kind of going that far to begin with. We don't know what kind of difficulty we'll really run into. We don't know what scripts might give them more units or something. So for now, South Africa Army, 363 MPPs. Very inefficient, I might add. This is very inefficient of me to do compared to just buying Brits. However, for allowing the HQ to kind of maintain these units, I'm realizing the value of the efficiency of doing this. So I will go ahead and purchase the South African 1st Army. Don't know why there can be a 2nd and 3rd when there can't be a 2nd and 3rd. And so we'll deal with the Corps later. That leaves the UK with only 45 MPPs. And as of right now, I believe that's everything that we have to do unless we're starting to upgrade garrisons. Well, not quite. We can get an upgrade for the South African HQ at the very least. Only anti-air, but it's better than nothing. We'll go pay for that right now because I have plans for this HQ, these corps, among the new Armenian Corps to head into Greece and try to make things easier for the Brits on the front so Montgomery can hang back with the air forces and not push with the front, and I can replace the front primarily with Greeks, Sudanese, and South Africans. Due to the UK's logistics being limited here, I would like to buff up the air power more than I would like to buff up anything else, which is why I'm refraining from sending additional British units up here if I don't have to. Not wanting to create any more expenditure for the UK than I have to, I will leave pretty much everything in the Pacific other than what's happening on Papua New Guinea silent for the time being. This fleet will stay here just in case the Japs have a little bit more of a fleet they want to send west. I'm ready for them, as the Americans deal with the primary threat and the Chinese handle the land fighting here, as we focus the UK almost entirely into the war in Europe, with only the Soviet front remaining, that being a big front. However, we are out of time for today, so thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.